This was really prompted by Janet Street Porter, who wrote an article saying, badly behaved children in restaurants and cafes are in my top 5 hates. I've got a theory that mums have different hearing to the rest of us. They seem to be highly selective, impervious to their child's ghastly racket. Restaurant owners should make it clear that you don't welcome small children, and you'll be trolled on Twitter and excoriated on Facebook if you were the devil incarnate. A few years ago, a survey found that 43% of us wanted children banned in some restaurants. She goes on to say, children should not be allowed to dominate adult environments. We don't allow dogs in most restaurants and cafes. Generally, they're better behaved than the average British toddler. What do you think?
I absolutely agree. I agree with Janet and I agree with Samantha in Sex and the City. And, yeah, absolutely. I cannot think of a meal I've had out where there has been a family next to me where it hasn't kind of like, you know, descended into absolute chaos and screaming and shouting. And it's not just the children, because then you get all the animosity between the husband and wife. You know, one of them will start hissing about, well, it's your turn to take him out. My food's getting cold.
Every time you've sat in a restaurant, there's been a family that's behaved like that?
Every time I've sat in a restaurant where there's been a family nearby and children nearby, absolutely, yes.
Well, you haven't sat next to us. My family, I took our little girls out when they were really small, and we always had stuff to play with, and then if for any reason one of them got bored, we'd take them for a walk, we'd come back. We never bothered anybody.
And some parents will be like that, and that's great, and that's how everybody should be.
I'd go further to say most parents.
Not most, not at all. I really do not think it's most. Literally, I cannot go out without being disturbed by... And it's not just restaurants, cafes, everywhere you go, it seems to be monopolised these days by children. And I think the problem is, obviously, it's the children that isn't the problem at all, it's the parents. They're kind of going along for their own entertainment, for their nice evening out, afternoon out, what have you.
Did you take your children to restaurants?
I did take him to places that I felt there would be other children where it'd be suitable. I didn't take him to kind of like, you know, little small sort of like restaurants
where... You couldn't keep him under control?
No, it wasn't that at all. Simply because I didn't... To be perfectly honest with you, if I was going out for a nice meal in the evening that I was paying a lot of money for, I wanted to be able to eat my meal when it was hot. I wanted to be able to sit and enjoy myself, have some wine, etc., etc. I didn't want to be there on babysitting duties. So if I was going out for that kind of meal, I would have booked a babysitter and left my child at home.
Isn't this good for children to go to restaurants and learn?
Yes, of course it is. I mean, I think you're probably going to the wrong restaurants, actually, because if you take children from a really early age and you're an absolute Nazi about manners, which we always have been, and I think a lot of other people are as well, you can get that child behaving really well. And once it knows that if it makes the slightest squeak or squawk or cries, it's going to be taken away, probably not even get its dinner. It's amazing how quickly...
It's not much fun for children, is it, being in that kind of environment? And I do agree, I'm very hot on manners, and I think that's the case. And I think the other issue we have here is because we do have such bizarre rituals and bizarre attitudes around food and eating. We sort of like eat in very odd ways. We go to the cinema and sit there with a tray of sort of like weird food on our lap and stuff our faces while we're watching a film. We eat in the street and all that. Well, I don't, but people do. You know, we eat very strangely. We don't tend to sit at a dining table at home anymore and have meals as a family. So children kind of...
people do.
Mostly children aren't in the habit of knowing how to sit and eat formally. But if you're talking about toddlers, 2 and 3-year-olds...
That's what parenting's about.
That's not their natural environment. They should be at a play centre running about,
let's let Sally,
you know?
Your children aren't a nightmare because they can't get a word in edgeways.
But eating is one of the great pleasures, and the children that you take to a restaurant today are going to be the people that go out and experiment and have wonderful meals and try things tomorrow. I mean, one of my great friends' 2 sons, when they were about 16 and 14, they were so into the thing of going to restaurants, they'd been going everywhere and trying everything, and they knew how to converse, that the 2 of them, just the 2 lads, saved up about 180 quid out of all their pocket money and birthday money, and they took themselves off to, what's his name, Heston Blumenthal's place. And they actually paid for the tasting menu. They sat there, just these 2 lads, and that's what you get with really getting children into loving food, loving restaurants. I mean, we've been taking our kids, well, since my son was 10 days old, we took him to our favourite Italian restaurant. He was, the moment he woke up, he was sort of whisked around the restaurant.
I love seeing children in restaurants. I think it adds sort of a nice atmosphere to the place. When you hear, you know, you're zoning in onto the bits, and all children, no matter how well behaved they are, can kick off occasionally, and that's unfortunate.
Absolutely.
But the best side of it is hearing the laughter and families getting on, and I can't think of anything
And that's
better.
great when that's happening, but I think, you know, we're talking particularly about the situations where you have got a fractious toddler, you have got, you know, little ones running around the tables because they're bored.
But they shouldn't be banned. They should just be... It's a parenting thing. It's not banning your children.
It's totally a parenting thing.
You should... Right, that's it.
You give them
take
paper
something
and crayons, you give them something to do, and you don't keep them waiting too long for their food, and you don't take some naughty 3-year-old to the Connaught Grill. You take them to somewhere reasonably child-friendly, and you say, right, you're going to sit there. If you need to go and run off some energy, we'll go.
And there's a space for you.
Okay,
well,
let's have a pause. Have a pause there, whilst I think that I'd never be to the Connaught Grill, let alone
Well, that's something that's bound to cause a divide. But where do you stand on this? Do you think eating out should be a family affair, or have you got the dining horror story to share? Also, what's the reaction when you eat out with your children?
I'm just going to have a look here and see
Have
whether...
you got any good ones?
Kimberly says we should be making restaurants more family-friendly. Parents shouldn't feel that they can't eat out because they've got children. Claire said it would be nice if some restaurants were adults only. We all need some time away from our kids, and a nice meal that you can eat in peace would be good.